soil samples because they think there was a craft there. They take soil samples and it's weird, and there's like the strange things have happened to the soil, and then later nothing will grow there but a circle of mushrooms shows up. So now you have a fairy ring, right? Mm-hmm. And the mushrooms are abnormally large. And then when you go back and you look at the fairy faith in Celtic countries, they would describe fairy rings out there, and they would say, yes, the fairies grow these, and they use the mushrooms to sit on. And they're actually large enough to sit on because they're huge, right? They're giant anomalous mushrooms.
Comfortable chair.
Sometimes they're phosphorescent, so they glow in the dark.
Oh, that's cool.
You know? So it's like weird. There's strange things like these saucer nests that if you go back far enough, they connect. And then there's the airship sightings. And I mean, it's stuff like they're dragging anchors along the ground. You know, and some guy comes out of the ship and climbs down the rope like he's underwater, and he's got to cut the anchor free from whatever it's caught. And he sees all the people, and he freaks out like he's like going down underwater, and then there's all these people down there, you know?
Yeah.
There was actually one story where he gets down close enough, and the people, because they all come out of church because they hear the anchor like drag across the top of the church, and then it gets caught, right? And they come out, and they see the guy coming down the rope. And a bunch of them grab onto him, and the bishop is like, no, let him go. He might suffocate, because they can tell that it looks like he's coming down from a ship, like he's in water. And they let him go, and the guy freaks out, and he just cuts the rope and like climbs back up. You know, you're like, what is going on here? What is happening? So I just can't imagine that the disclosure, if there is any disclosure that's happening right now, is going to be able to address any of that stuff. It's too far out the edge.
No way. They're just going to address whatever the nuts and bolts aspect, I think.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Now, I have heard some people explain how this changes people's lives, but I just can't imagine that they're going to be able to really see how weird this phenomena is, you know. So that's my take on what's happening right now.
I agree. And I mean, it's hard enough to, it's impossible actually to weed out the stories that are just not factually correct.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's impossible.
Yeah. Yeah. So the good ones are the ones with multiple witnesses and multiple ways of checking.
Right.
And those are the ones that, you know, in general, those are the ones that are in Vallee's books. So if you read Messengers of Deception, and then when you get into things like Messengers of Deception, when you get into Revelations, and when you get into the Invisible College, then he starts describing how the intelligence agencies get involved. And then it gets even more complicated so you have the phenomenon itself. Then you have hoaxers, people who are just making hoaxes, but then you get the intelligence agencies, or whatever it is, maybe branches of the military. Who knows what they are? Some of them seem to be esoteric organizations. And they start, whatever these other organizations are staging basically what are hoaxes that are incredibly complicated, with lots of witnesses, and it really messes with people. And it seems to, there's this overlap with the phenomenon itself, because then later there's a big flap of sightings, and symbols from what is almost clearly an intelligence hoax show up in actual sightings in a different country years later, and you're like, wait a minute.
As though they knew it was going to happen or something.
Yeah, or the phenomenon itself it knows about the hoax, and because it likes to be weird and on the fringe, merges some of those symbols from the hoaxes into its own appearances in a different country.
Loki.
Yeah, it's trickster-like. And it takes people years later looking back through files of multiple countries to put these two things together and say, wait a minute, why is that symbol on this, what looks like a legitimate UFO flap in Russia?
Well, I mean, okay, but the other way it could be looked at is that similar to stuff we've been going through in hidden history, where like this guy finds a pretty legitimate find, and then somebody else comes along and is like, oh yeah, I put the skeleton there, you know, blah, 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 and turn it into a hoax.
Yeah.
Even though it actually was legitimate.
Yeah.
Do some things that make it seem like a hoax.
After the fact.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's, the other aspect of it is the possibility that whatever this phenomenon is may be able to, well, okay, if you begin to make the connections using pattern recognition to more to older phenomena like the fairies and even the, say, the magic practicing of the Middle Ages. Then you get into the concept of people who are saying it is possible through certain rituals to make pacts with these beings and they will show up on command. Okay. That was definitely a consideration with the Fae.
Solomon.
Yep, and with Solomon. So now the question is are these the demons and the angels?
Yeah.
You know, and that raises the question is if certain shadowy government agencies have been looking into this, have they been making pacts with these things using old ancient rituals? And that's why symbols show up in weird places that seem to cross over with, you know, is that why these things seem to merge when you see the really complex things that look like a hoax? They seem to merge with the phenomenon a little bit, and that's why, because they are merging in some way.
No idea.
Yeah, I don't either. I'm not actually asking a question for an answer. I'm just posing it as a thought experiment. Like, could this be taking place? And this is what's muddying the waters. And then, you know, of course, plenty of sightings are going to be. I'm not actually talking about the sightings that are probably advanced tech that is experimental and human. You know, when you again, I keep referencing Vallee, but when you go through his books, he's pretty good at weeding that stuff out and weeding out the things that are clearly hoaxes, except when he wants to show you a specific hoax thing to show you how this works and what people are doing and where these hoaxes come from.
Yeah.
You know, and then the other thing is the UFO cults that show up. They have been, the phenomena seems to purposefully generate new religions on a regular basis. Most of them don't take. They get a few followers. Some of them get thousands of followers. Some of them get tens or hundreds of thousands of followers. None of them recently have become global religions. But it's like...
all we need is a cataclysm.
Yeah. But it's like that's what they've been doing all this time, is seeding these belief systems.
Yeah.
Okay.
Joseph Smith.
Yeah.
Most recent one.
Right. Probably the most recent large one that got started.
Yeah. It's really weird. So you're kind of going all Bramley on it again.
Yeah.
The guy has an interesting take.
Yeah. They definitely act like the custodians.
Yeah.
In some way. And the other thing, that the other point that Vallee makes that I totally agree with is we can't say that they're from space. There's just not enough evidence to say that they aren't from here. In other words.
Okay.
And I kind of agree with that. I don't know if that means they're living in the water or they're living in some other dimension or they live underground or all of the above, or if you can't even really talk about it that way. But I definitely agree that whatever it is has been here a long time, and it doesn't and we don't really have any evidence that says that they, except for things that they tell us, but you know, that are the things that the phenomena tells the people that it contacts. But it tells people that it contacts different things all the time about where they come from. So some people take that to mean that there's lots of different ones, and
all right,
they come from a bunch of different places, but I don't know.
So one of the criticisms that many people, including Graham Hancock, have of Sitchin was that right at the time of the technological development of rockets and all this stuff, Sitchin comes up with this whole rocket ship analogy for all these ancient texts.
Yeah.
Convenient, right?
Yeah. He's putting his own cultural overlay onto these ancient things.
Yeah, except when you consider the idea that right when we got the nuclear technology, that all this crazy stuff started happening, and then we started getting crashes and all this weird thing going along with that.
Yeah.
And what was my other point about that? I just lost it. Well, anyway, I was just trying to make that connection that maybe it's not a coincidence.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't think it is.
Okay, I remember. These guys that we got from after the war, all the scientists and stuff from Germany and everything that came over here were ultimately the ones developing the rockets and all of that tech. What were they doing? They were going all over the world looking at ancient sites.
Stuff.
Right?
Yeah, that's right. You're right. You're right. Okay, I see the connection now.
So like Sitchin, it just happened to be, maybe that's the coincidence, that he happened to be doing this and grew up in this time period and happened to be looking at all of these things that actually do correlate to the technology at the time.
Yeah.
So
because there is a correlation, is what you're saying.
There is a correlation.
Yeah. Yeah. He wasn't putting a cultural overlay on it. The cultural overlay was the ancient one being put on the modern one by the German scientists.
That's right.
Okay. Because of their research into ancient mysteries and civilizations. Yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, and we've talked about it too, that why did they start naming all of the spaceships after, gods?
Ancient gods, yeah. This new moon thing you just named it as like Artemis? I'm like, come on, what are they doing? What is going on here? Was it Artemis? I can't remember if it was Artemis or...
The new moon mission?
Yeah.
I think it is, something like that.
I mean, now it's following the trend, but
it's following the
there's
trend.
a group of dudes at NASA who come up with these names, and you're like, I want to ask them, like, why are you doing this?
Yeah, the guys that were coming up with the original names aren't with us anymore.
Right, these guys are following the trend, the Gemini and Apollo.
So my point is that when that was actually being developed, they were coming up with those names on purpose.
Yeah,
this was
on purpose, for sure.
Not just for fun.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and if they, there is a common message that seems to be given in a lot of these cases. And again, the cases that Vallee goes through in his book are complicated ones that include close encounters of the third and fourth kind. Like it isn't just seeing lights in the sky, unless that is the only way he tells you, like, somebody saw a craft and that's it, is when it takes place around or nearby right at the same time as somebody else actually encountering the beings and the craft landing. So he's going through complex cases with multiple witnesses, sometimes with radar returns, all that kind of stuff. So you aren't looking at... They're well documented and have many witnesses that were interrogated, like debriefed by the police and stuff. And there's this common motif across a lot of them where sometimes, in a large number of the cases, the aliens or whatever they are, the beings seem to be concerned with whatever it is we're doing, and they're like, oh, you're nuclear weapons, or, oh, you're destroying the planet, or...
freaking watchers. Dang it.
Or
go back to your bag of chips.
Or sometimes they're telling the person that that things are going to change, and that they will return. Yeah. But you do get the sense that they're kind of playing with humanity as a whole and sort of trying, from the fringes, from outside the edges of our understanding, somehow trying to guide us towards certain things psychologically by affecting large numbers of people, sometimes through one person, sometimes through mass sightings. And it's never a global event, but...
Yeah, I mean, I love my cat. It's a great cat. Good fuzzball, kind of fat. I feed him well, try to take care of him, love on him. But every now and again, I bust out the laser. Just mess with his brain.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yes, but are you guiding him towards something strange with that laser? Is it a long, this is a lifespan thing that you're doing over time that seems to be calculated to turn him into a different kind of cat by the end of his life? Because that's what this seems to be.
I just want to confuse him sometimes.
Okay.
And maybe that has some ultimate result that I'm not smart enough to figure out.
Right.
Surely there are some of those out there.
Yeah. All right. Let's take a break, and then we'll